In an interview about dealing with Princess Kate's cancer diagnosis, Prince William says keeping secrets from his children doesn't work. The prince said the couple have been completely honest with George, Charlotte, and Louis about their mother's illness and King Charles' health battles. He told Brazilian TV, "Every family faces difficult times. How you deal with them makes all the difference. There's no rule book for being a parent. We just chose to talk about everything, the good news and the bad."
It began with a solemn address from Buckingham Palace, one that shattered hearts across the globe. King Charles and Prince William, side by side, yet visibly shaken, confirmed what many feared, but few could speak aloud. Princess Catherine's condition had taken a devastating turn, one that could change the future of the monarchy itself. But what exactly are they hiding behind this carefully crafted statement, and why now? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. There had been whispers for weeks, speculation about Catherine's prolonged absence, her uncharacteristic silence, the guarded responses from senior royals when questioned, but nothing prepared the public for the moment Charles and William stepped in front of the cameras. The announcement came without warning. No formal invitation to press, no lead-up stories in the tabloids, just a somber address from the palace streamed live across the world. William stood slightly behind his father, his hands clenched tightly as Charles took the podium. The king's voice, though familiar in tone, wavered as he opened with the words, "with deep sorrow." That phrase alone sent shockwaves across social media. Royal commentators froze mid-broadcast. The press fell silent. This was not protocol. This was not planned. This was grief breaking through tradition. Palace aides had been seen rushing down the corridors just moments before the broadcast, visibly shaken and refusing to answer reporters. One senior aide reportedly collapsed behind the scenes after receiving confirmation of what was to be announced. For a family so rehearsed in stoicism and carefully curated messaging, this level of visible distress was rare, unprecedented even. Charles continued, pausing more than once, his eyes betraying the emotion behind the crown. He never uttered the specific diagnosis. There were no medical terms, no press-ready jargon, just an overwhelming weight in his words as he stated Catherine's health had taken a turn. That phrase, ambiguous yet final, left the world clutching for more. It wasn't a clarification, it was a veiled surrender. But perhaps the most telling part of the moment wasn't what was said, it was what wasn't. William did not speak, not even once. His presence, always calm and calculated, now seemed haunted. He stared ahead, his jaw tense, his body frozen. Observers later noted how his lips seemed to tremble, how he reached for the edge of the podium before stopping himself. The second in line to the throne, the future king, was barely holding it together. Body language experts quickly weighed in across every network, pointing out the subtle signs, the shoulder tension, the lack of eye contact, the way William and Charles never turned to one another. This wasn't just the announcement of medical news, it was the public unraveling of a family trying to maintain its dignity while watching their anchor slip away. Within minutes, global headlines erupted. Royal shock, Catherine's condition confirmed, palace in crisis. But behind the headlines lay a deeper unease. Why now? What forced their hand? And was there more? Something far more devastating that the family was not ready to admit? But to truly understand how things reached this breaking point, we must go back to the first signs that something was deeply wrong behind palace walls. The palace may have maintained its polished facade, but behind the smiles and orchestrated public appearances, something far more sinister was unfolding. For months, whispers echoed through the corridors about cancelled engagements, secret medical visits, and sudden absences. Was Catherine battling more than just exhaustion? And why did the palace work so hard to keep the public in the dark? It began subtly. One missed event here, another postponed engagement there. At first, royal commentators brushed it off as fatigue or scheduling conflicts, but the pattern became harder to ignore. Catherine, known for her unwavering dedication and polished presence, had vanished from the spotlight without warning. The Duchess, who once stood as the emblem of stability, had grown eerily silent, and the palace offered no answers. Behind the walls of Windsor, an unusual tension began to swell. Security was discreetly increased near a previously dormant wing of the estate, one known to house a private medical suite. Staffers, who usually maintained a calm professionalism, now wore anxious expressions, whispering in corners and rushing through hallways. Those close to the Duchess were suddenly unavailable for comment, and royal aides, some of whom had worked with the family for over a decade, were asked to sign updated non-disclosure agreements. It wasn't just about privacy anymore, it was about control. The public remained largely unaware until children began asking questions no one wanted to answer. At a school event in Berkshire, Prince George was overheard asking a teacher, "Where's Mommy?" The moment, innocent and heartbreaking, rippled through the royal household. It was no longer possible to shield the children from what was happening. Catherine had grown more withdrawn. Louis had begun refusing meals. Catherine's absence was no longer a media management issue. It was a family crisis unfolding in real time. Adding to the mystery, William took a sudden, unexplained trip to Balmoral. No official itinerary, no royal duty listed, just a private flight, a heavily secured lodge, and silence. Insiders hinted that it wasn't just a retreat, it was a forced moment of reckoning. A decision had to be made, and it had to be made without Catherine at the table. But it was the leak of a single internal email that sent shockwaves through the institution. The message, allegedly written by a senior aide close to the Cambridges, referred to a worsening situation and difficult days ahead. Though the palace refused to comment on its authenticity, the wording was too specific, too deliberate to be ignored. It confirmed what many feared, that the silence wasn't meant to protect Catherine's privacy, but to protect the monarchy from the weight of the truth. And still, the palace insisted on smiling portraits and recycled public statements, but the mask was slipping. People were asking questions, loyalists were growing uneasy, and even the most trusted members of the royal circle were beginning to falter under pressure. The truth was no longer containable, and what came next would shake even the most loyal royal watchers to their core. To the public, he was stoic and composed, but behind closed doors, Prince William was a man unraveling, torn between duty to the crown and devotion to the woman he loves. As Catherine's condition worsened, William faced impossible choices: speak out, protect the secret, or prepare his children for a future no father wants to imagine. The pressure was unrelenting. Every hour brought new updates from the medical wing, most of them bleak. William, once known for his measured calm, had become visibly fractured in private. He wasn't sleeping. Staff reported long nights pacing the halls, endless calls to medical experts, and arguments behind locked doors. He fought with advisors who urged transparency, who pushed for public reassurances, but William wasn't ready to give up hope or give in to palace protocol. One close friend, a trusted confidant from William's school days, recounted witnessing a full emotional collapse in the early morning hours. William had just returned from a visit to Catherine's bedside, his face hollow, his voice barely a whisper. He reportedly wept openly, something those closest to him had rarely seen. The friend, shaken, later told someone inside the palace, "That was not the future king. I saw a broken husband." But even through the collapse, William was unwavering on one point: his children. He drew a hard line with the palace press office, forbidding any intrusion near George, Charlotte, and Louis. He refused to allow them to become symbols in a tragedy still unfolding. George, on the cusp of adolescence, had begun asking questions no one could answer. Charlotte cried often, and Louis had started clinging to his father with unusual desperation. William made it his mission to be present, even as he was breaking inside. Tension also flared between William and Queen Camilla. The two clashed over the palace's evolving media strategy. Camilla reportedly pushed for a controlled narrative to protect the firm, while William accused her of prioritizing image over truth. The disagreement, though hushed in public, created a rift that insiders say hasn't fully healed. William was done playing the game of optics, his family was suffering, and the crown's silence felt like betrayal. One moment, however, captured the gravity of William's dissent more than any other. A torn page from a personal journal was allegedly found and quietly circulated among a handful of trusted aides. On it, written in his own hand, were just 9 words: "I feel like I'm losing her piece by piece." Those words, raw and unfiltered, exposed a man caught between unimaginable grief and royal expectation. Despite the chaos, William maintained a sacred ritual. Every day, without fail, he visited Catherine's private suite. No entourage, no security, just William, sometimes with flowers, sometimes in silence, sometimes reading her letters written by the children. These visits became the only moments where he could let the crown slip and simply be a husband terrified of goodbye. But while William fought in silence, the weight of the crown demanded clarity, and King Charles was about to make a decision that would change everything. Behind tightly guarded doors at Clarence House, King Charles held a series of emergency meetings, some with legal advisors, others with parliamentarians. The topic, a never-before-seen clause buried deep in the royal succession framework. With Catherine's condition threatening the long-term vision of the monarchy, would Charles rewrite history to protect the throne? What began as a private family matter was fast becoming a constitutional crisis. For all its pageantry and ceremony, the monarchy is at its core an institution, and institutions survive on structure, contingency, and control. With Catherine's decline accelerating, Charles faced a brutal truth. The future queen consort, beloved by millions, might never again fulfill her public role, and so he turned to the law, not for comfort, but for leverage. The clause in question had not been seen in modern times. Buried in a labyrinth of royal protocols dating back to the post-Windsor reforms, it addressed the theoretical but now horrifyingly relevant possibility of a consort becoming permanently incapacitated. It allowed, under extreme circumstances, for the monarch to appoint a guardian to carry out the symbolic and ceremonial duties of the consort should she no longer be able to do so herself. The problem? Implementing it meant acknowledging publicly what the palace had worked tirelessly to conceal. Charles did not make the decision alone. The Archbishop of Canterbury was summoned to Clarence House for what sources described as a spiritually guided constitutional review. Behind the polished wood doors of the king's study, scripture and sovereignty collided. They explored a chilling possibility. Would the crown survive the emotional fallout of sidelining Catherine officially while she was still alive? William resisted. He argued fiercely with his father behind closed doors. To William, Catherine was not a failing consort. She was the mother of his children, the beating heart of their family. Formalizing her incapacity felt like betrayal. But Charles, already carrying the weight of a divided family and a fragile commonwealth, saw no other path forward. He needed to safeguard the institution, and the clock was ticking. Then came the most unexpected voice in the room, Camilla's. Those present say she shocked the room by defending Catherine's legacy. "We don't erase her," she allegedly said. "We honor her by protecting what she built." Camilla advocated for preserving Catherine's public titles and position, even if her duties were delegated. Her rare moment of solidarity carried weight, but it didn't change the legal reality. Legal advisors pushed hard for a quiet resolution, a declaration of medical incapacity delivered privately to the Privy Council could allow the Crown to begin succession contingency planning without sparking mass panic. It would also open the door to a possible regency should William need to assume more responsibility. The word regent hadn't been spoken in decades, but now it echoed through the palace halls like a ghost. Whispers of these closed-door meetings leaked just enough to ignite a storm of speculation. Media outlets hinted that Charles was preparing to enact a rarely used royal provision. Political circles in Westminster buzzed with rumors of constitutional amendments. But while the press circled, the king remained silent, pen poised, parchment ready, and the fate of the monarchy dangling in the balance. While decisions were being drafted in ink and parchment, the woman at the heart of it all was fighting battles far greater than politics: her body, her mind, her silence. For the first time, sources close to the Duchess revealed the devastating truth. Catherine wasn't simply unwell, she was enduring a brutal multi-system collapse triggered by a rare and aggressive condition. The timeline of her suffering is darker, longer, and more painful than the palace ever admitted. And now the full truth demands to be heard. It began not with a headline, but with a whisper. 2 years before the world caught on, Catherine had already begun to feel her body turn against her. What started as brief spells of dizziness and fatigue escalated into chronic pain, blurred vision, and moments of disorientation. But she kept it hidden. She was determined to carry out her duties even as her own strength began to betray her. Every wave, every walkabout, every radiant smile was a performance laced with quiet agony. Those close to her now admit they didn't fully understand the depth of what she was masking until it was too late. Doctors eventually gave the illness a name, an autoimmune neurological hybrid disorder so rare that only a handful of specialists in the world had treated it successfully. It attacked her nervous system and immune response simultaneously, triggering neurological inflammation, immune suppression, and unpredictable cognitive lapses. The prognosis was never good, but Catherine, in her typical quiet resilience, refused to let it define her. She told no one outside her immediate circle, not even her extended family, not at first. Privately, the situation worsened. Catherine experienced multiple fainting episodes during official engagements, which palace aides swiftly covered up as exhaustion or dehydration. In one chilling incident, she collapsed minutes before a scheduled charity event, only to be revived and insist on proceeding with the engagement. Royal staff were shaken but instructed not to speak. Catherine reportedly told her head aide, "The world doesn't need to see weakness, not mine." Then came the surgery. What was presented to the public as a routine abdominal procedure was in truth a high-risk operation to reduce the inflammatory damage ravaging her internal organs. It failed to bring relief. Instead, complications set in. Catherine's immune system began shutting down in unpredictable waves, prompting the decision to place her in near-total isolation within a specially outfitted wing of Windsor. Only a handful of medical professionals and family were allowed near her. The rest were kept in the dark, even her most loyal staff. But perhaps the most heartbreaking revelation of all is what she left behind during her lucid moments. Fearing the worst, Catherine began recording voice notes, messages of love, strength, and guidance for her children. Each note was carefully labeled, some meant for birthdays, others for milestones she feared she might not live to see. In one particularly haunting message intended for Charlotte, she simply says, "If I can't be there to hold your hand, just know I am still holding your heart." And then came the night everything nearly ended. According to an insider, a sudden medical collapse triggered a full emergency protocol. Royal medics flooded the suite. Alarms rang through the halls. Charles and William were summoned at once. For a terrifying stretch of hours, the palace held its breath. The monarchy's most cherished figure had come to the edge of death and somehow clung to life. As Catherine battled in silence, the institution around her began to fracture. Loyalties tested, alliances strained, and old wounds reopened. In a twist no one anticipated, Meghan Markle privately reached out to the palace, offering words of support and something more. The message, delivered through an intermediary, reignited tensions in the firm. But it wasn't William who reacted first. It was Princess Anne, and her response would set off a chain reaction. The message arrived quietly, unannounced, and without ceremony. It was not delivered through official diplomatic channels, nor routed via the palace's press team. Instead, it came via a discreet intermediary, reportedly a former aide with personal ties to both Meghan and Catherine. Enclosed within the sealed envelope was a handwritten note from Meghan herself, addressed directly to Catherine, filled with words of comfort, sorrow, and a plea for reconciliation. For a family already on edge, it landed like a thunderclap. William was informed immediately, but chose not to engage. Those closest to him say he didn't even read the note. The wounds of the past, the accusations, the headlines, the interviews, it was all too much. His silence, however, did not prevent the letter from reaching its intended recipient. With Catherine too weak to speak or respond, the palace allowed one of her private nurses to read it aloud in the quiet of her recovery suite. What was said remains locked behind palace lips, but one source described it as emotionally disarming, whether genuine or not. But it wasn't William who would respond first. It was Princess Anne. The moment she was briefed on the contents of Meghan's message, she reportedly erupted. According to insiders, Anne dismissed the gesture as too little, too late, calling it a calculated move designed to manipulate public perception rather than offer genuine compassion. Her reaction sparked an internal firestorm. Charles was said to have urged calm, but Anne's fury was unrelenting. She believed the timing was no accident, that Meghan's note was less about Catherine and more about damage control. The feud reignited almost instantly. Within hours, private correspondences between the Sussex camp and palace communications were once again being reviewed. Tensions long buried beneath protocols surged to the surface. And then another surprise twist emerged. Harry reportedly had no knowledge of Meghan's note. Multiple insiders confirmed that he was unaware she had sent anything to the palace, let alone a personal message to Catherine. That detail raised more questions than it answered. Was Meghan acting out of genuine remorse, or was there a deeper strategy at play? Royal observers were quick to draw comparisons. Some called it a clumsy olive branch, others a masterstroke in PR chess. But one voice stood out, an aide who had once worked closely with Queen Elizabeth. In a rare on-there comment, they described the moment as hauntingly symbolic, noting how far the family had drifted from the late Queen's unwavering commitment to unity, silence, and grace under pressure. As the letter continued to divide those inside the palace walls, the public remained unaware of the turmoil it caused. But the internal fracture was growing, and just as the royals tried to regain control of the narrative, a leak would shatter what little privacy remained. As the royal family fractured under emotional weight, the public had questions, and one leaked file would soon give them more than they'd bargained for. A whistleblower from within the royal medical team did the unthinkable, leaking a confidential report to an anonymous source. The document contains startling medical details about Princess Catherine, including prognosis notes, treatment failures, and an emotionally chilling letter she had written for her children. The leak rocked the monarchy, and public sympathy exploded. It wasn't supposed to reach the outside world. For months, the royal medical team had operated under the highest levels of security, non-disclosure agreements, encrypted communication lines, and daily briefings to ensure that no details escaped the palace walls. And yet, overnight, a file marked "Highly Confidential, Duchess of Cambridge Long-Term Prognosis" appeared on a secure whistleblower platform. Within hours, it was in the hands of major media outlets, its authenticity verified by insider cross-checks. The truth was no longer behind curtains. It was out, raw, painful, and irreversible. The report confirmed the worst-case scenario. The soft light through the window, Charlotte's steady gaze, Catherine's distant expression, it all painted a portrait not of strength but of endurance, and that, more than anything, resonated with the public. Within hours, the post amassed millions of reactions. Messages of support poured in from every corner of the globe. Celebrities, world leaders, humanitarian figures, and even past critics of the monarchy publicly shared their prayers and tributes. What had begun as a silent photo became a deafening cry of solidarity. The world was no longer being spoken to by the crown, it was hearing directly from the heart of a mother, a woman, a queen in waiting. But even more telling was the silence that followed. Kensington Palace issued no follow-up. No interviews were granted, no clarification offered. The image stood on its own, unexplained and unrepented. In the absence of official commentary, speculation bloomed. Was this Catherine's way of saying goodbye? Was it a controlled moment of farewell masked as hope? Experts on royal communication described it as a masterclass in soft power, a personal message disguised as public resilience. And yet beneath the admiration and sympathy, there lingered something heavier. A quiet knowing that this might be the last image of her shared with the world, that the poised and powerful future queen was no longer just an icon, but a symbol of fragile human strength in the face of unimaginable decline. It wasn't a statement of survival, it was a whisper of grace. But the story does not end there, because what came next forced Charles and William to speak again, this time with a finality no one was prepared for. In the wake of Catherine's decline, the monarchy faced a crossroads. King Charles and Prince William returned to the public eye, older, wearier, and irrevocably changed. They confirmed what no one wanted to hear. Princess Catherine would no longer carry out royal duties indefinitely. The crown must evolve. But at what cost to the family and the nation? The palace statement, released with stark formality, left little room for hope. It confirmed what the world had feared since the whispers first began. Princess Catherine had been placed on indefinite medical leave from all official royal duties. The phrasing was clinical, distant, and yet beneath it lay a devastating human truth, that the woman once seen as the monarchy's strongest anchor was now stepping away, not by choice, but by force of circumstance. And just like that, the public image of the future queen shifted from regal leader to silent sufferer. Prince William, having spent months in quiet turmoil, was now tasked with a role far greater than the one he had prepared for. In a sweeping adjustment to royal operations, he would assume full-time responsibilities, not only as heir, but in a regency-style capacity, representing both the future and the present. Though no formal regency was declared, insiders described the arrangement as a soft handover, with William now making key decisions traditionally reserved for the monarch. It was a heavy burden for a man still grieving in real time. The children, too, would see their lives change. With their mother no longer in the public eye, Princess Anne was appointed as an additional royal guardian, an unprecedented move signaling the firm's intent to protect the young heirs at all costs. Anne's role, insiders say, was both symbolic and deeply personal. She had stood beside Catherine from the beginning, and now she would stand beside her legacy, ensuring the next generation was shielded from both political pressure and personal collapse. But even as the palace attempted to move forward with dignity, the public was not ready to forget. Rumors began swirling immediately. Speculation over who, if anyone, might take up the ceremonial mantle of queen consort in the distant future stirred outrage. Social media erupted with fury, and even the suggestion of replacing Catherine. The public sentiment was clear. There could be no substitute for the woman who had given so much only to be silenced by illness. In response to the emotional tidal wave, a new initiative was announced, the Catherine Foundation for Neurological Research and Resilience. Backed by royal funding and private donors, the foundation would focus on the very condition that brought Catherine to this point. It was more than a tribute, it was a statement that her legacy would not be defined by absence, but by action, by advocacy, by a continuing commitment to the very causes she championed, even when she could no longer do so herself. The final words of the public statement came not from the king, but from William. In a trembling voice, he closed the announcement with a line that echoed across the globe. She gave everything and more. It was a moment of closure, and yet it didn't close anything. It opened wounds, it exposed sacrifice, and it left a nation reckoning with the reality that even royalty is not immune to suffering. As the world absorbs this heartbreaking truth, one question remains. What will the monarchy look like without its most beloved heart? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.